Welcome back to Flow of Food. This is activity packet number 2. Again, you will need your worksheet with you. Feel free to pause this presentation as we go so that you have time to fill in the blanks. And we are going to start today with a short video from YouTube, and I will pull that up for you here and make it full screen so that it is easier for you to see.
FIFO is one of the most commonly used practices in the restaurant industry. FIFO stands for first in, first out. So when I get a new product in a restaurant, for example these canned artichokes, I'm going to take the new product and I'm going to place it to the back of the shelf so that when my employees come to grab the new product here, they're going to take the older product that we have. That's going to ensure that this is the first product used and the newer product is used last. You can apply this to everything in your home in terms of food. Canned goods, dry goods, sugars, flours. You can use it in your freezer as long as you're dating and labeling your foods properly. If you get in a new pack of yogurts from the grocery store, pull the old ones out, put the new ones to the back, and then replace the older ones to the front. It may take a little more time, a little more energy, but in the end it's going to save you money and it's going to give you better, fresher tasting food in your home.
Okay, we are back and we will keep going here. Okay. All right, you may want to pause this for a few minutes so that you can answer the questions regarding FIFO, and then when you are done writing those in, go ahead and continue with the presentation. The next 3 slides are going to discuss the 3 different methods of storing food, and that's dry storage, refrigerator, and freezer. And as you are going through the worksheet, feel free to pause it as you need to and complete your chart. Dry storage. The room should be well ventilated and around 70 degrees, which is room temperature. The room should be clean and dry. It needs to be clean so that you're not attracting rodents or insects, and dry because moisture in that room is going to promote the growth of mold, and your food is going to become stale. Most foods for dry storage are already labeled, and if you think about that, cereal, crackers, they all come in boxes with, pictures and what's inside them. However, if you have some that are not labeled, you need to get it in bags and labeled with the name, what it is, and when it should be consumed, sold, or discarded. Now, most unopened dry goods are safe to use for 6 to 12 months. But if you're not practicing FIFO like they just discussed in the video, you could find a box of crackers on the back corner of a shelf that have been there for 3 years, and now you have to throw them away, which was simply a waste of money. So if you're practicing FIFO with your dry, your refrigerator, and your freezer, you're not going to be throwing valuable money away, and you're also going to have a fresher product for all of your customers. Once a dry good is opened, it will often become stale if not properly stored in an airtight container, like crackers. And something that drives me crazy, and I'm sure it drives Mrs. Sweeney crazy as well, is students will put things away and not wrap them up. They'll put, let's say, crackers back on the shelf and the box is open. Or they'll put, lettuce or something, or an opened can of stock in the refrigerator and not cover it. They'll put a brick of cream cheese in the refrigerator and not wrap it up. And we just have to throw that food away. It takes seconds to grab a piece of plastic wrap or a Ziploc bag to properly wrap that food up. And we need to get that food wrapped so that it doesn't become contaminated, so that it doesn't start drying out, and that we can continue to use it for other labs, classes, or events. Food needs to be 6 inches from the wall and the floor. Open shelving is preferred for airflow so that the air keeps moving, but in Illinois it's not required in the pantry area. It is required in the refrigerators and freezer, but it is preferred, and that is generally what we use here at Leiden, is open shelving. And you want the food kept out of direct sunlight. If it's in the sunlight, it's just cooking. It's sitting there baking and it's going to spoil very quickly or become stale. Refrigerator storage. Refrigerators should be set to 41 degrees or lower. Now lower means to 35, between 35 and 41. You don't want it at 30 degrees because your liquid products would start freezing. So somewhere between 35 and 41 is out of the danger zone. You want to keep monitoring those temperatures. Now most commercial fridges and freezers, as do the ones in our classroom, have a thermometer right on the outside of the door, so as you're walking by you can see what the temperature is, and if you see that it's in the danger zone, alert your teacher. Something has gone wrong. Maybe there was a pot power outage. Maybe we've blown a breaker. Maybe somebody left a door open, or it could be the motor's burned out. Everybody did something right, but the motor of the refrigerator has burned out. So if it's starting to creep up, we can save all of that food by moving it somewhere else. If it's a freezer and it's already gotten to 40 or 50 degrees, we have to throw everything away. But we need to throw it away so that nobody gets sick. So if you see that, please let your teacher know. You need to label all food. Most restaurants use a day dot system, meaning it's a series of dots, stickers. Your teacher may or may not have some to show you. And every day is a different color. So red might be Mondays, brown might be Tuesdays, and so forth. And there's a space on those to write down what they are. Any potentially hazardous food, again, that's what PHF stands for, that is made on site and is stored for more than 24 hours must be labeled. So in restaurants, a lot of times they make their own ranch dressing. They'll have the containers of ranch dressing, they cover them with plastic wrap, then they take a day dot. So if it's Monday, they grab the Monday dot and they put it on there and they write the day it was made or the date it needs to be thrown out, whatever the restaurant does. Okay, now when I worked at Denny's, we put the date it was made. All right, but we had to know it had to be thrown out in 3 days. So some restaurants do the day it's made, some do the day it needs to be discarded. And the storage times differ for different foods, so you have to know this as well. A clam chowder is made with milk. That's going to spoil much quicker than minestrone soup, which is made with water. So you have to know that as well. You want to be careful not to overload the refrigerator. If you pack your refrigerator wall to wall, floor to ceiling, the only food that's cold is the food on the outside. All the food in the middle is well insulated and it's keeping nice and toasty warm. The whole way a refrigerator works is it's blowing that cold air through the refrigerator, keeping the food cold, which is why it's so important to have open shelving and have space in between these foods so the air can get through. You never want to place hot food in the refrigerator, and we talked about that in Activity 1. Putting a big kettle of hot chili in that refrigerator is going to heat up the entire refrigerator, and your potentially hazardous foods stand a very good chance of spoiling. So you want to cool that food down, put it in smaller containers first. You want to store raw meat, poultry, and fish separately from cooked and ready-to-eat foods to prevent cross-contamination. Your meats go on the bottom, your cooked foods can go in the middle, and your ready-to-eat foods go on the top. Ready-to-eat foods are foods that you can grab and go. A lot of your produce, you just grab it and eat it. An apple. Yogurts. You don't want any chance of anything dripping onto those because those foods are not cooked, so there's no way to kill any bacteria that may have gotten in them. So those need to be up high so nothing can drip on them. And again, wrap food properly. If you're putting food away, wrap it up so it stays fresh, it stays able to use it for the next. Like onions need to be put in Ziploc bags or the entire refrigerator will smell like onions, okay, and taste like onions. Freezer storage is the last, and freezers are generally set to 0 degrees. This keeps all the food solidly frozen. You want to check the temperatures regularly, again, on that thermostat on the outside of the door. Again, sometimes things happen. Sometimes we blow a breaker. One time maintenance moved our freezer to clean and forgot to plug it back in. We've had a motor go out. All of those things will obviously cut the power to your freezer, and it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars to replace all of that food. So you want to make sure that that temperature is staying nice and cold. Anytime you've made food on site, you have to label it. So if you make a big batch of marinara and you're freezing it, you'll put it into your Ziplocs or your freezer containers. Then you want to take a marker or a day dot and label what it is and when it needs to be discarded or when it was made, so that you know what it is. In a month, you're going to forget when you made it, or in a couple months, so you want to have all of that labeled. When you receive your deliveries from your food supplier, your freezer food has to be put away as soon as possible. So you inspect it and immediately have it put in the freezer. Some food suppliers will actually have, their dolly or stuff and wheel the food right into your freezer once you have inspected it. So you want to make sure all of that is done so that your food stays out of the danger zone and does not begin thawing. Next, you want to defrost your freezers regularly. Some of you may not even know what this means. Back in the day, freezers would build up a coat of ice on the inside, and it could get inches thick, and that would burn out the motors. And so regularly you would have to take all the food out, put it in coolers, defrost the freezer, chisel off that ice, melt it, clean your freezer, and then put all the food back in after the freezer had gotten cold again, so that the motor didn't burn out. 99% of all freezers today are frost-free, so we no longer really think about that. If you're a manager of a restaurant, you will need to keep maintenance on your refrigerators and freezers and make sure the coils stay clean and change the filters. Maintenance does that for here at Leiden for us. If you're the manager of a restaurant, that responsibility would fall onto you. And you want to keep the freezer door shut as much as possible so that food in there stays nice and cold and nothing is starting to thaw. And going back, I want to talk one more second about wrapping food properly for a freezer. If you put a piece of meat, for example, in the freezer and it's not properly wrapped, it's not airtight. So let's say you put it in a Ziploc bag, but you don't take the 2 seconds to close the Ziploc bag, that steak is going to get what's called freezer burnt, and it's kind of like frostbite. The tissue on that meat gets rock hard as it would frozen, but it damages the fibers. It's frostbite, only it's called freezer burnt when we're relating to food. When you go to cook that steak, the steak will get hot, but the area that's freezer burnt will still be hard. It won't soften up and cook properly, so that food has to be thrown away. So again, you have to wrap the food properly so that it is preserved. Okay, once you have completed your worksheet, turn that into your teacher and have a great day.